Welcome to the live watch along of Joel Guy Jr. This is episode 1. We're going to be doing the jury rules, then we're going to be watching the opening statements and see where we get to, really. Don't forget, if you want to write to inmates like I do, then use the service I use. It's called J-Mail. It's fast and it's secure, and it means you don't have to use your home address. The thing that I like most about it is you don't have to use your home address, you don't have to give it to inmates, and also you get the physical letter sent back to your house. So it's the safest way of doing things. I'll leave a link to their services in the description below. Okay guys, let's get going.
All right, welcome back everyone. All of our jurors are here and ready to go. I want to explain our protocols and why space in the courtroom so limited due to the COVID virus. The Supreme Court has asked that all local courts follow certain guidelines, including social distancing and masks. And that's why everybody has to wear a mask. Once the trial begins with testimony, we're going to move the plexiglass to the witness stand, and I'll put my mask on, and that'll allow the jurors to take their mask off if they're behind here. Here's the thing, folks. I'm trying a double homicide case. I cannot worry about social distancing. So you're all adults. Y'all know who lives in the same households and who's hanging out together. I can't focus on that. I just ask that you honor the Tennessee Supreme Court wishes, which are also my orders now as well, too. And so we're making as much space as we can for the public. There has been...
Just a quick one, the audio does improve. We just got to get through this first part of poor audio, but it's important that we watch this.
I'm concerned about public access and limited space in the courtroom. I think that's being accomplished through media coverage. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about the protocols. Just make sure you're following those. I can't really focus on policing them. All right, gentlemen, you ready to bring our jury in?
Yes.
You ready, Mr. Halstead?
Yes.
All right, go ahead and bring them in. Yeah, tell them to go ahead and remain standing this time. Folks, whenever the jury comes in or out, just go ahead and stand. It'll take us a minute to get them down here. They're at the far end of the hall, socially distanced from our other jury. All right, I'm going to ask the jury to remain standing. Everyone else, you can have a seat. Well, good morning to our jurors. Thank you for being here promptly with us this morning. I appreciate your service once again to our community. Normally, when you come into the courtroom, you can go ahead and immediately take your seat as soon as you get there. But if you recall, when we were selecting the jury last week, I told you if you're selected to be on this jury, you're going to take another oath. And so it's time for you to take that really important oath. So if you would all please now raise your right hands. After you hear the oath, if you agree to it, signify by saying, "I do."
Do you solemnly swear that you will well and truly try the issues joined from the state of Tennessee is the plaintiff and Joel Michael Guy, charged with first-degree murder, felony murder, and abuse of a corpse, is the defendant, and a true and just verdict render according to the law and the evidence, so help you God?
All right, have a seat, folks. Now, what I'm going to do is have my court officers take their oath. So listen to this oath, and I'm going to tell you what they're doing in just a minute. Officers.
You solemnly swear to take charge of this jury, keep them separate and apart from all persons, not converse with them about the matters on trial, nor permit anyone else to do so, and return them again in open court on orders of the court, so help you God.
All right, folks, those folks that just took the oath, they're your court officers. Their primary job is to keep you folks taken care of, keep you separate and apart from anyone else. That means they can't let anybody talk to you about this case. If you have any cares or concerns during the course of this trial, they are the right people to go to. This is Officer Shaver right here and Officer Coker in uniform. Over here we have Officer Kerr in uniform, and back here's Officer Thompson. Now, they cannot talk to you about this case, but if you have a question like what's for lunch or when are we going back in there, you can certainly talk to them about those issues and they can answer those questions. If you have a concern about the case, anything that's going on during the trial, you can relay those to them, but they'll have to bring that to me to address if I can. But they're the folks to go to if you have any concerns whatsoever. All right? Now, what I'm going to do is read to you some preliminary instructions. These instructions are designed to give you an idea of the outline that our trial will follow, as well as an idea of what your job as a juror will be and what my job as the judge will be. So please listen closely as I go through these instructions. It takes me about 10 minutes. The defendant has been charged by the state of Tennessee with a violation of state law. The document containing the charge is referred to as the indictment. The indictment is a formal written accusation against the defendant, but does not create any inference of guilt. The defendant is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of felony first-degree murder, and I'll explain to you the difference in those before you begin deliberations, and 2 counts of abuse of a corpse. The elements of each of those offenses will be defined for you in my written jury instructions that you will receive before you begin deliberations in this case. The defendant is presumed innocent and may not be found guilty by you unless, after hearing all the evidence in the case, the attorney's arguments, and instructions of law, the 12 jurors seated in this case unanimously find that the state has proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt. The burden of proof remains with the state throughout the trial of the case. The first step in the trial will be the attorney's opening statements. The state will tell you about the evidence it intends to present so that you have an idea what the state's case is about. This opening statement is not evidence. Its only purpose is to help you to understand what the evidence will be and what the state will attempt to prove. After the state's opening statement, an attorney for the defendant may make an opening statement if they should so choose. They do not have to make an opening statement because the defendant has no burden of proof in this case. If they do make an opening statement, I remind you that statements of attorneys are not evidence. Next will be the state's case in chief, in which the state will present its evidence. The witnesses will be testifying based upon questions asked by the attorneys. The questions asked by the attorneys are not evidence. Only the responses of the attorneys are considered evidence. And of course, that's in the context of the question that was asked. For instance, if the attorney says the shirt was red, wasn't it? And the witness simply says yes, then you may take that to mean the testimony is that the shirt was in fact red. After the state completes its case in chief, the defense will be given an opportunity to present the evidence, through witnesses and exhibits. A defendant is not required to put on any evidence or to testify. The burden is always on the state to convince you beyond a reasonable doubt the defendant is guilty. If the defense does present proof, the state may then put on what is known as rebuttal proof. And after you hear the state's rebuttal proof, the defense may put on further proof. Once you have heard all the evidence in the case, the parties may present final or closing arguments. Again, closing arguments are not evidence. In closing arguments, the parties will attempt to summarize their cases and help you understand the evidence that was presented and what inferences they wish to draw from that evidence. The final part of the trial occurs when I instruct you on the rules of law that you are to use in reaching your verdict.
Can you imagine what he's feeling right now? Just like you've been inside for, I don't know, a couple of years, maybe a year or so, and then you get to this day. Just like he's pretending to write, I'm not saying pretend, he's writing things down, but you must just be terrified. Or do you reckon he's feeling any of that? I don't know.
At that point, I'll excuse the alternate jurors if we still have any left, and the final 12 jurors will leave the courtroom together as a group. You will then begin your deliberations to make a decision in the case. Your deliberations will be secret, and you will not be required to explain your verdict to anyone. So now that I've described the trial itself in outline form, let me explain the function that you and I perform during the trial. I will decide which rules of law apply to the case, and my decision will be reflected in my responses to questions and objections the attorneys raise, as well as in my final written jury instructions. It is your job to determine what the facts are from the evidence. You must then apply the law in my instructions to those facts, and from that application, you will arrive at a verdict. The state has a burden of proving the guilt of the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt, and this burden never shifts, but remains on the state throughout the entire case. The defendant is not required to prove his innocence. You as jurors must decide whether the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant has committed the crimes charged in the indictment. You must base that decision only on the evidence in the case and my instructions about the law. An important part of your job will be making judgments about the testimony of the witnesses who testify. You should decide whether you believe what each person says and the importance of his or her testimony. There is no specific set of guidelines on what you should consider in making that decision. I suggest use common sense first and foremost. The court will not provide you with a transcript of the testimony at the end of the trial. Therefore, you must listen very carefully to the testimony of the witnesses. Each of you will be allowed to take notes during the trial for your own use during deliberations. You are not required to take notes. Independent memory can be as accurate as written notes. And that's why I provided you those notebooks and pens. If you want to take notes during the trial, you certainly can. You will have those with you during the deliberations to refresh your memory. If you don't want to, if you just want to focus on what's being said, you certainly can do that as well. Everybody retains things differently, and I'll leave that up to you to know what works best for you. During the course of the trial, you should not talk with any witness, defendant, or attorney involved in this case. Please do not talk to them about any subject whatsoever. You may see them in the hallway, on an elevator, or at some other location. If you do, the best standing rule is not to say anything at all. And that is hard for us in East Tennessee because we are a friendly bunch of folks. And if you see somebody you recognize, you're naturally going to nod, smile, at least say hi.
Because we are a friendly bunch of folks.
Hi. If any of these people see you while this case is going on, they are completely ignore you. If they're walking toward you, they're going to stop and turn and walk away from you. They're certainly not going to say anything to you. They're not even going to make eye contact. Again, please don't be insulted by that. They're not being rude. They're just following my instructions to make sure we keep you folks separate and apart from anyone else throughout this entire process. You also should not discuss this case among yourselves until I instruct you on the law at the end of the case and I'll allow you to begin deliberations. It's important that you wait till you've heard all the evidence in the case before you begin deliberations. And that's another instruction that is difficult to follow because naturally when you take a break, you're going to want to talk with your fellow jurors about maybe a witness you just heard or something that was displayed in evidence. Please do not do that. Don't say anything at all during breaks or lunch or at any point during this trial until deliberations begin with your fellow jurors. Just keep it all in your mind.
I would find that incredibly difficult. I can't help but speak. I really can't. Guys, if you can please like the video, subscribe if you're new, and also in the link below if you want to help the channel out, help me make more videos faster, become a channel member, and join us on Members Only Lives. Nice one.
Once deliberations start, you'll have an opportunity to talk about everything you saw and heard, but don't say anything at all about what's going on during the trial. And that includes not only among yourselves as jurors, but with you and your family and friends. So when you go home at the end of the day, or you call home at lunch or call work, please don't talk to them at all about this trial. I gave you that caution last week several times. I'm going to continue to do that. So just make sure that you're not saying anything. Just keep it all in your mind until deliberations begin. You as jurors must decide this case based solely on the evidence presented within the four walls of this courtroom. This means that during the trial, you must not conduct any independent research on your own or try to gather any information on your own that you think might be helpful. In other words, don't consult any dictionaries, electronic devices, media, or use your phones or anything else in any way to gather information about this case. Everything you need to decide this case will be presented inside this courtroom during the trial, or you already have it in your heads from your own life experiences. So it's very important that when you take a break or during deliberations or at any point during this trial, if you're using your phone, it's not connected to this case whatsoever. I let you keep your phones with you. Some judges don't. Some judges collect every juror's phone when they walk in the courthouse in the morning. I know you need to stay connected to the rest of your lives outside of this trial. I just want to reiterate to you, don't consult your phones at all. I had a juror one time look up the definition of a word asking Siri a question. That's something we've all become accustomed to. Well, you've gone outside of the information in the trial, and that caused a real problem for us. So don't use your phones in any way to help you during the course of this trial.
You should 100% just take the phones off. I didn't realise how long it's going to be. It's only a couple more minutes now. I may as well finish it off with him. But you should just take the phone.
There will be media reports in the newspapers, radio, and television about this case. I've already given you multiple warnings about that. I'm going to do that one more time, and that is please avoid any media coverage about this case. And I also want to caution you again about social media. Many of us follow reporters on our social media. Some of us even have pop-ups on our phone that gives us notifications. If that is the case for you, I would instruct you to avoid social media during the course of this week. And also local coverage, I would encourage you not to watch the news this week. I know there's a big political debate tomorrow. I would suggest to you, if you want to watch that, then do that through a national news media, just so you don't hear any blurbs or anything at all about this case. So just be extra careful about your media exposure over the next week, or at least until this case is concluded. At times during the trial, an attorney may make an objection to a question that was asked by another witness or by another attorney or to an answer that a witness has given. This simply means that the attorney is requesting that I make a decision on a particular rule of law. Do not draw any conclusions from the fact that an objection was made or from our ruling on that objection. My rulings only relate to legal determinations that I have to make and should not influence your thinking at all. If I sustain an objection to a question, the witness will not be permitted to answer the question. Do not attempt to guess what the answer might have been had the witness been permitted to give it. If I sustain an objection to a statement that was made, you must put that statement out of your mind, and you may not refer to that statement in your later deliberations. I'll probably say something to the effect of, please disregard the statement of the witness. You may not ask questions to the witnesses. It's the responsibility of the attorneys to present the evidence to you, and you have to base your decision upon that. I may ask a question or two of a witness. If I do, that does not indicate any opinion regarding the facts of this case or any opinion regarding that witness's credibility. Again, those are simply questions that I have to ask. You can consider the answer as proof in the case, but please don't put any undue emphasis on a question that I have asked. It'd be no different than one of the attorneys asking the question. Finally, during the course of the trial, I may have to interrupt the proceedings, consult with the attorneys about certain issues of law. If I do, in some cases, we will do that with you remaining in the courtroom. We'll step over to the far side where Officer Thompson is, outside of your hearing. It'll be on the record, but no one else in the courtroom will hear it, where we can have brief discussions about the law. In other cases, I may need to send you out of the courtroom back to the jury holding area, where we take up a matter out of your presence. Again, these are important decisions that I have to make, and sometimes it's pretty quick and easy for me to make up my mind. Other times it will require for me to listen to a more lengthy argument from the attorneys, maybe even hear some additional proof. If that were to happen and we end up with a long delay and you're back there in the jury area twiddling your thumbs wondering what's going on, please don't hold that against either side here. If you want to blame somebody for the long delays, just blame me and my poor legal education. I owe it to these parties and the citizens of the state to get these decisions right, and sometimes I need to take a little bit of time to think these things through. So I'd ask you to be patient with me, but again, if you want to blame somebody, just put that on my shoulders. If after your deliberations you find the defendant guilty of any offense, the court will set any appropriate punishment according to the law. The jury will not be involved in setting the punishment in any way. Now, the last thing I'm going to tell you before I turn this over to the attorneys for opening statements is somebody may have said last week when you came in here, you're going into Judge Sword's courtroom, and that's just sort of shorthand people use. If you're going in Division 1, they'll say this is Judge Sword's courtroom. If you're in Division 2, they'll say you're in Judge Hickson's courtroom. Or if you're downstairs in Division 3, they'll say you're in Judge Green's courtroom. This courtroom does not belong to Judge Sword. This is not my courtroom. I just simply work here. This courtroom belongs to the people of the state of Tennessee. And guess who that is? That's you folks. This is your courtroom. So I want you to feel every bit as comfortable sitting here in this jury room, or in that jury box in the back now, as you would sitting in your own living room. I hope I've impressed upon you how incredibly important service that you're providing to our community. So I want you to know if there's anything that I can do to assist you in the performance of that duty, please don't hesitate to ask. If you're having a hard time hearing me or an attorney or a witness, please raise your hand, especially you folks in the back. Raise your hand, let me know. I will turn the microphones up or ask them to speak up. If you need a break, I will take a break whenever you folks need to. If we took a break 5 minutes ago and you want another break, we will take another break. We'll take as many as you folks want. So please don't hesitate to ask for that. You are in control of that as much as possible. All right. That being said, we're going to publish the indictment to you. And so, General Sanchez, if you'd please publish the indictment.
I really like this, Judge. I do. I'm glad we've watched this now, although the other information was a bit basic. We just got to know him a bit more. He's just a character. I've watched quite a few of these now. I've never really gone, he seems like a nice guy.
State of Tennessee, County of Knox, Criminal Court for Knox County, Tennessee. The grand jurors for the state of Tennessee, upon their oaths, present that Joel Michael Guy, heretofore to wit, on or about the blank day in November 2016, in the state and county aforesaid, did unlawfully, intentionally, and with premeditation kill Joel Guy Sr. in violation of TCA 3913-202 and against the peace and dignity of the state of Tennessee. Second count, and the grand jurors aforesaid, upon their oaths aforesaid, do further present that Joel Michael Guy, heretofore, to wit, on or about the blank day of November 2016, in the state and county aforesaid, did unlawfully, intentionally, and with premeditation kill Lisa Guy in violation of TCA 3913-202 and against the peace and dignity of the state of Tennessee. Third count, the grand jurors aforesaid, upon their oaths aforesaid, do further present that Joel Michael Guy, heretofore, to wit, on or about the blank day of November 2016, in the state and county aforesaid, did unlawfully kill Lisa Guy during the perpetration of first-degree murder in violation of TCA 3913-202 and against the peace and dignity of the state of Tennessee. Fourth count, and the grand jurors aforesaid, upon their oaths aforesaid, do further present that Joel Michael Guy, heretofore, to wit, on or about the blank day of November 2016, in the state and county aforesaid, did unlawfully kill Joel Guy Sr. during the perpetration of theft in violation of TCA 3913-202 and against the peace and dignity of the state of Tennessee. Fifth count, and the grand jurors aforesaid, upon their oaths aforesaid, do further present that Joel Michael Guy, heretofore, to wit, on or about the blank day of November 2016, in the state and county aforesaid, did unlawfully kill Lisa Guy during the perpetration of theft in violation of TCA 3913-202 and against the peace and dignity of the state of Tennessee. Sixth count, and the grand jurors aforesaid, upon their oaths aforesaid, do further present that Joel Michael Guy, heretofore, to wit, on or about the blank day of November 2016, in the state and county aforesaid, did unlawfully, knowingly, and without legal privilege, physically mistreat the corpse of Joel Guy Sr. in a manner offensive to the sensibilities of an ordinary person, in violation of TCA 3917-312 and against the peace and dignity of the state of Tennessee. Seventh count, and the grand jurors aforesaid, upon their oaths aforesaid, do further present that Joel Michael Guy, heretofore, to wit, on or about the blank day of November 2016, in the state and county aforesaid, did unlawfully, knowingly, and without legal privilege, physically mistreat the corpse of Lisa Guy in a manner offensive to the sensibilities of an ordinary person, in violation of TCA 3917-312 and against the peace and dignity of the state of Tennessee. Signed, Sean P. Allen, District Attorney General.
Thank you, Judge Sanchez. Mr. Halstead, how does Mr. Guy plead to these allegations?
Not guilty.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, you're excused. Thank you so much.
Not guilty. Jeez.
I will see you tomorrow. All right, ladies and gentlemen, is the rule sequestration of witnesses requested?
Yes.
All right, if there are any witnesses involved in this case in the courtroom, Mr. McCord, your designated detective, you may remain in the courtroom. Any other witnesses, you must be excused at this point. You may not discuss your testimony with any other witnesses.
Family members or witnesses.
Oh, and family members as well, too. So nobody should talk about any testimony that you hear during the course of this trial. And also, I would instruct you, you cannot watch any live streaming. If there's any live streaming from media on this, those witnesses are prohibited from doing that as well, too. All right, it is time for opening statements. Julian, may I begin your opening statement?
Okay, so I'm just going to flip it over. For those of you that don't know, by the way, plead not guilty. For those of you that don't know, like what he did, he killed his parents. Basically, they were going to cut him off financially. It just paid for all his life. And he got to like 27, and then they were going to cut him off, so he just decided to kill him instead to get the insurance money. Dismembered the bodies, put them both in baths of acid. They're both like separate bodies in different baths of acid. Got his mum's head, put it in a big pot and boiled it in the kitchen for 2 days. And was halfway through like cleaning the crime scene, then just disappeared and just left the house just rotting with the bodies and all that, and just the smell and the heat. Blatantly him, and he's going not guilty, which is mental. Okay, guys, yeah, please like the video, drop the video a like, subscribe if you're new, and consider becoming a channel member. Link is below to the main channel. Helps me do this more often. Nice one, guys. Thank you. Let's keep going. So this is now the opening statements. Let's go.
All right, John, you may begin your opening statement whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and attention this week. I want to thank you in advance. We expect to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that on November the 26th of 2016, Joel Michael Guy Sr. was viciously attacked in his home in the exercise room that he had upstairs. During this assault, he sustained 42 sharp force injuries. You're going to hear proof from the medical examiner and from a forensic anthropologist about these injuries. And what you're going to hear is that these injuries were so severe that marks were left on his ribs, 12 of his ribs, marks ranging from scratches to complete severing. The medical examiner is going to tell you that the cause of his death was multiple sharp force injuries that caused damage to his lungs, to his liver, and to his kidneys. He sustained a wound to his scapula, which is where your shoulder is, and it was such a severe wound that a fragment from a blunt force instrument was left in the muscular tissue next to the bone. He sustained abdominal wounds, so he was attacked from the front as well as the back. You're going to hear testimony that most of the stab wounds occurred in the back portion of his body. His hands were severed at the wrists. And you're going to hear evidence that there was a lot of blood staining evidence in this exercise room that indicated that there was a fierce struggle. In one corner of the room, there is blood evidence to show that there was thrashing motion. It left not only blood marks, but wipe marks and droplets on 2 walls of the room and extensive blood staining on the carpet. You will hear that he sustained defensive injuries on both of his hands, which indicate that he was fighting and he fought for his life. And his hands were sliced. And you're going to see photographs and hear testimony about the nature and the extent of these injuries. After he was murdered, the killer disrobed him, meticulously took off his clothes, his shoes, his pants, his shirt and jacket, left them in a heap on the carpet. He left Joel Sr.'s cigarettes on top of the pile, and they were blood-stained. He left his hands in the room. At some point, Lisa Guy came home, and she too was subjected to a violent assault. And you're going to hear testimony and see proof of her injuries. She was stabbed 31 times, and she sustained serious injuries to her ribs. She had 21 rib injuries. 21. 9 of her ribs were severed. And you will hear a forensic anthropologist talk to you about the variation of the injuries to her ribs, indicating not just slice marks, scratches, severing, but also evidence that the sharp instrument used to stab her twisted into the cartilage of her ribs. She had one rib that was fractured from blunt force trauma, not sharp force, but blunt force, indicating that there was pressure applied to her ribs. And you will hear that most of these injuries occurred to her back. She had one injury to her clavicle and a stab wound, and she had several stab wounds to her buttock. You will hear testimony that there was evidence in the upper hall at the top of the stairwell from the bottom floor to the top floor that indicates that this is where her murder took place. Blood staining on the walls, drip marks, marks that indicate a spray, perhaps. And like Joel Sr., her clothes were removed from her. They were cut off and left in a bloody pile on top of a large blood stain on the carpet. You will hear that the scissors were found there, along with a knife. You will hear that there were also 2 knives left in the exercise room. So at some point, after Joel Sr. and Lisa were murdered, the killer went to work on their bodies. Joel Sr.'s arms, both of them, were severed at the joint, the shoulder blade. Both of his legs were removed at the hip.
Like, what in the world is he writing down there? You severed your dad's arm at the joint, and he's going, that's not correct. It was just below. I don't know what is he saying there. Last impression of his voice I'll be doing.
His right foot was removed at the ankle. And as you know, his hands, of course, also removed at the wrist. Lisa had both of her arms removed from her torso at the shoulder. Both of her legs were cut off below the knee. Her right hand was severed from her arm. And the killer cut off her head. You will hear testimony from a forensic anthropologist who will tell you that her head was basically broken from a part of the spine called the atlas. There was a blunt force trauma applied to her neck before her head was severed from her spine. After the limbs of these people were removed, the killer placed them separately into two 45-gallon blue Sterlite containers. You will hear testimony and see evidence of where that took place, and you will learn that in the master bedroom of their home, plastic sheeting was placed on the floor, and these blue plastic bins were placed on the sheeting. The killer put Lisa's body parts in one, and he put Joel Sr.'s in the other. And then he covered them with a corrosive substance and left them there to liquefy into some sort of diabolical stew of human remains. And then the killer took Lisa's head and carried it downstairs and took it into the kitchen. He got out a stock pot, placed her head in the pot, filled it with liquid, carried it over to the stove, covered it, turned on the stove, and left it there to cook. So, you will.
That is unbelievable, isn't it? Like, that's bad enough, beyond bad enough to that to anybody, but to your own parents, because they were going to cut you off financially because you've never had a job or done anything with your life. That is absolutely unbelievable. It's unfathomable. Let's keep
Here, some proof from family members. About this family. And you're going to hear this photograph was taken on the Thanksgiving day just before their murders, November the 24th. Photograph is taken by Michelle Dennison, Joel Sr.'s daughter. And you're going to hear a little bit about this family. You're going to hear that Joel and Lisa were very happily married. They loved each other. They had been married for 31 years. And the defendant was their only child. But Joel Sr. had been married before, years before, and he had 3 daughters, Candace and twins, Michelle and Angela. And you're going to hear from each of them a little bit about their family. And you're going to hear that they communicated regularly, and they had a great relationship with their dad and with Lisa, whom they were very fond of. Lisa had treated them like they were her own. You're going to hear a little bit about the dynamics of this family, and you're going to hear that on Thanksgiving, Joel and Lisa had arranged to have a family get-together, and Michelle and her boyfriend and her 3 young sons, who are depicted in this photograph, came to spend the day, all that Thursday, came to spend the day with Lisa and Joel. Angela and Shandis weren't able to come, so it was just these people, along with the defendant, who came up from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where he lived. He drove up the day before, November the 23rd. You're going to hear that this was going to be, and I'm not being smart aleck, when I say it was going to be their last Thanksgiving in this home that they had on Golden View Lane in Knox County, because they were moving. Joel and Lisa had plans. Joel had worked as a contractor. He designed piping systems. Lisa had a job with Jacobs Engineering. She was a disbursement specialist. And they were done with work. Lisa had turned in her notice. Joel's contract was concluded, and they had decided to retire for a while, and they were moving. Their house was for sale. They had a contract on it, and Joel was going to buy his family home in Surgoinsville, Tennessee, in Upper East Tennessee, near Kingsport. And he had made arrangements with his sister, Robin White, to purchase the home. And this was going to be the last Thanksgiving that the family was going to spend in Knoxville. Their next holiday plans were going to be for Christmas in Surgoinsville. They were ready, to move on and to enjoy what was left of their lives. So, I want to give you an idea of kind of a timeline for where we are this weekend. And you're going to see that the defendant came to Knoxville from Baton Rouge on November the 23rd. The family get-together was on Thanksgiving the 24th. You will hear proof that on November the 25th...
Maybe we're going to find out more of a background, but I just think it's insane that, he's got no criminal background, as far as I'm aware. He just does this. He just goes knee-deep with all of this. This is, heavy. This is really heavy. Even for, a serial killer, this is heavy. You know what I mean? It's just... Joel
and Lisa and the defendant drove up to Surgoinsville to deliver a boat that Joel Sr. had, and he wanted to take it to the Surgoinsville house. You will see and hear evidence that Lisa was alive on November the 26th, sometime after noon. We know that because of evidence we have from a shopping trip that she made in Knoxville. And we know that the defendant was in Knoxville on November the 26th, also because of evidence we have from a receipt where he went shopping at a store, a Walmart store, and was seen there around 3:35. The evidence will show that Joel and Lisa were murdered on Saturday, November the 26th. You will hear proof that the defendant left Knoxville at some point on November the 27th. And you will hear proof that the guys' bodies were found on Monday, November the 28th. So, how did that happen? Jennifer Whitehead is a supervisor at Jacobs Engineering. She worked with Lisa. They were work friends. They had a good relationship, and she's going to tell you that the week after Thanksgiving was going to be Lisa's last week of work. She was due to I'm sorry I keep doing this, but I cannot. I'm having a hard time speaking. She was going to have her last day on Friday of that week, and she didn't show up for work on Monday. Now, this was very unusual. Jennifer's going to tell you that Lisa was quite dependable, and Jennifer was worried about why she didn't show up and why she didn't call, why she didn't text. She became concerned because she started to call her. Some women at work had planned to take Lisa out for lunch that day, kind of a going-away luncheon. And this was highly unusual behavior. So Jennifer calls and texts multiple times, and with no response. And she became so concerned and had such a weird feeling about it that she called 911 and asked them to send officers out to perform what we call a welfare check. And you're going to hear evidence that an officer, Stephen Ballard, did go by the house on Golden View Lane in Knox County, and he went to check things out. He will tell you that, he saw cars in the driveway, really didn't see any signs of disturbance. He didn't look that closely, knocked on the door, I think, nobody answered, and then he left. But Jennifer wasn't satisfied, and she persisted, and she asked the sheriff's department.
What a lovely house as well that is. Like, I don't know what the people's backgrounds are like, but that's like a very upper middle class, I'd say. I don't really know what houses are like in America, but that's much nicer than my house, you know what I mean? And they're obviously funding his life, just ultimate, like, spoil, isn't it? It's mad.
Because this was in the county, to check again. So Detective Jeremy McCord made a trip over there. And he made a number of observations while he was there. He too noted that there were 3 vehicles in the driveway, 2 cars and a truck. He noted the for sale sign in the front yard, and he thought that was kind of significant because he had been looking at houses himself, and he noticed on the front door that there wasn't a realtor lockbox. Typically, that can happen when that will be present when a house is for sale. He went to the front door and knocked and didn't receive an answer. He knocked hard, identified himself as a member of the sheriff's department, wanted, to let whoever was inside know that he was there to check on their welfare. And when he was at the front door, if you will notice these, he was able to look in and see through the windows that there were groceries that were scattered in the floor of the foyer area. And that concerned him. There were a number of bags left in the floor. So no one responded to the knocks, and he decided to go around back. And when he went around back, he observed that the doorknob from the back door was missing. It's completely gone. And he thought, well, that's strange, because the doorknob on the front door had looked sort of weird to him. It didn't look like it fit properly in the front door. There were scratch marks around it. And so he made the conclusion that for some reason, the doorknob from the back door had been removed and placed on the front door. And he just felt like something was wrong. He heard a dog barking inside. And he just kind of became alarmed, and he felt like there was a need for officers to go inside. He even called the realtor to try to figure out, what was going on. Those were their cars. The realtor suggested maybe looking inside one of the cars to see if there was a garage door opener that could open the garage door so he could get in. And he made the decision to go in. In law enforcement, this is kind of called exigent circumstances, and it means that there is a fear of an emergency situation that requires police to enter into a residence. And we'll hear from Detective McCord, it's not that unusual. Law enforcement officers all over the country every day respond to welfare check requests. And they are, they find injured people, they find people who are sick, and sometimes they find people who are deceased. And
sorry to break the chain of everything there. Just reminded me of Frank Skinner out of The Simpsons, just like bouncing his, was it a tennis ball or a basketball, then breaking his record the next day. Welfare check, God knows.
And so he was worried and decided that, he needed to check on their welfare, and so he went in. And when he did so, immediately upon opening the garage door, he felt more of what he had felt when he was at the back door. When he was at the back door and looked through the hole that was left from the doorknob, he had felt heat and had detected kind of an odor that concerned him. But when he opened the garage door, there was a blast of heat and an overpowering smell, something strange, something that he had not smelled before. And so, being alarmed at the unusual nature of this situation, he decided to go in with some trepidation. He was careful. And the way law enforcement officers go into a house under these circumstances, because there may be danger there, who knows what they might encounter, they go from room to room. They announce themselves as law enforcement officers, and they move through the house in what is called a clear. They're clearing it. And he will tell you that they entered through the garage into the kitchen area, and he's going to describe for you the things that he found inside the house that were very unusual to him. Other than the heat, which he will tell you was, when they looked at the thermostat, the temperatures were in the high 90s, okay? I'm not talking about a warm house. I'm talking about a hot house. And I'm talking about an odor that caused officers to have physical reactions to. In the kitchen of the house, he saw things scattered on the floor, and he noticed towels and bottles of bleach and a bottle of muriatic acid and garbage bags. He noticed that the stove was operating and there was a pot on it. He noticed that the oven was on. He noticed that there was a cell phone on the counter, and on the kitchen table there were 2 wallets that were out. That one looked like it belonged to a female. There was a picture, an ID of a woman on it. The other was brown, looked more masculine. A ball-peen hammer and a vice grip, a lady's purse on the table. It looked unusual to him. He kept announcing law enforcement. And he moved through the house. He went into the dining room, and there he saw weapons on the dining room table, boxes of ammunition in the floor. There were tools also on the dining room table, a screwdriver and what appeared to be a lock set, another doorknob lock set. In the foyer, there were multiple bags from a Walmart that had groceries inside them, including perishables, things like ice cream, bacon, and sausage, the sort of things that one would, you would expect that you would put away in the refrigerator as soon as you came home. Some boxes of beer. And as he went through the house in the downstairs, he just became more and more anxious. There was a little study area, a den. The den contained the door that had the missing doorknob. There was animal waste, feces on the carpet, and urine stains. There was a heater that was plugged in and was operating at full blast. And again, he noticed the thermostat set so high. He goes through the...
I can't wait to hear his defense to this, because of his gone not guilty. Like, how, what?
Downstairs, and as he did so, he starts to feel fear. And, he'll tell you, he's not ashamed to tell you, it was scary. He began to go up the stairwell, And as he was going up the stairs, he noticed that there were blood drip marks on the walls. And there was blood on the carpet. And I mean, at this point, he will tell you he knew that something terrible was wrong. And at the top of the stairs, he sees this pile of clothing, this pile of bloody clothing and bloody scissors and a bloody knife and a big blood pool. And he looks down the hall and he sees a pair of severed hands on the carpet in a room down the hall. And it freaked him out. His fear turned to horror as he continued to go through the upstairs, clearing, the dogs barking on and off. He goes into the master bedroom, and he sees in the floor a weird assorted jumble of articles that don't even appear to be used. There's a bag of clothes, there is a work light, there's a sledgehammer, there's a portable heater that you can clamp on. It clamps on to a surface. There's a face mask that looks sort of like what one would use to do painting, a more protective mask than the one that I'm wearing. There's a blender and a box of latex gloves, a black garbage bag. A roll of plastic sheeting is on the bed, which is made. Well, it was made and tidy. And Beanie Babies, pile of Beanie Babies on the carpet next to all of this. And other articles. I'm not sure that I'm remembering all of them. Bottles of food-grade hydrogen peroxide, like jugs, big jugs. A jug of liquid fire, which is a drain opener. Back in the hall, next to Lisa's clothing, there were 3 empty, big gallon, 5-gallon, I'm not sure how many gallon tubs of something called sewer line cleaner number 2, and an empty bottle of Robic drain opening solution. That was in the hall. So back to the master bedroom. All of these weird, unusual products are here. And the master bath door is open. And of course, he can see what I described to you just a few minutes ago. And it's something he will tell you that he never expected to see. And he can't unsee it. The floor of the master bath coated in plastic, the same plastic sheeting cut from the sheeting that was left on the bed. A garden hose connected to the shower head, a heater running full blast, a knife in the sink, and the remains of what appeared to be human beings. At the time, Detective McCord will tell you he didn't know how many, who they were. He didn't know what he was dealing with. And they continued to clear the house. And in nearly every room in the house, they find evidence. I think there was one room that was used for storage that there was packing. People, you could tell that the homeowners were packing. Things were boxed up. I don't think they recovered anything out of that room, but there's a guest bedroom that they went into. And in that room, on the bed, the unmade bed, there was a laptop computer that was plugged in, a used latex glove on the carpet. There was a backpack in a corner. There was a bloody jug of the same food-grade hydrogen peroxide on the dresser, along with a box of latex gloves, some credit cards that appeared to be issued to Joel Sr., other articles, blood staining on the carpet and a blood stain on the sheet, I think. There's a bathroom upstairs in the hall, sort of a guest bathroom. But I forgot something important in the guest bedroom. There were two blue tote lids that corresponded with the blue plastic bins that were in the master bathroom. Two lids for these were found. One propped up next to a suitcase that had some rumpled clothing in it, and also one under the bed. So the tote lids that corresponded to the tubs in the master bath were in the guest bedroom, along with a note that was in the suitcase that mentioned a store, had the address of a business in Louisiana. I love this name, Dan Boudreaux's Ace Hardware in Napoleonville, Louisiana. So that note was in the suitcase in the guest bedroom. So they move on to the guest bath, and it's a mess. There are blood stains everywhere, on the door, on the floor, on the sink and the counter. There's a pile of clothes, like some shorts and a t-shirt and underwear that have some blood staining on them in the floor. Used latex gloves scattered on the countertop, a knife on the counter, bottles of rubbing alcohol, a couple of bottles of those, a couple of bottles of hydrogen peroxide, some medical tape. Looked like someone had treated an injury there. Okay, just blood staining everywhere, and some other first aid supplies. And also on the counter, there's a Walmart bag that contains a receipt, and that receipt depicts the products that were found in the room, and that receipt depicted a date, November the 26th, 2016, and it depicted a time, 15:35:25, 3:35 p.m. And as if all of those discoveries weren't bad enough, go back downstairs after they've gotten rid of the dog that was locked up in a laundry room in this stifling heat. They get someone to take care of the animal, to get it out of the house and to be treated. I don't know, Animal Rescue, the Humane Society. He was animal control, I guess is what it's called. But they go back down to the kitchen, and they open the lid on the pot on the stove, and they discover a human head. And they will later learn that that's Lisa Guy's head cooking. Still simmering. The stove was still on. So Detective McCord and the other officers there, they realize this is a monstrous crime, okay? They're feeling some sense of urgency now to figure out who did this. And they have to take steps to figure out how in the world, what are we gonna do? How are we gonna solve this? So they do what investigators do, and they interview people. They do a neighborhood canvass. They talk to people in the neighborhood to try to figure out when the guys were last seen, who may have been at the house. They notify next of kin. They discover from Michelle Dennison that she was just there, that she was there on Thanksgiving, that her half-brother, Joel Jr., Joel Michael, they call him, was there. He gets a description of vehicles. He gets on that receipt from Walmart. And when he goes to Walmart to check this out, he's able to talk to someone there who is kind enough to cooperate, and they give him video. They maintain security footage at the stores because of shoplifters and for business purposes. And so Detective McCord is able to, that very day, the 28th, get get a video image and a still shot of the person who made that purchase. And he is able to have that person who's depicted in that image identified as Joel and Lisa's only son, Joel Michael Guy, the defendant. And they get an arrest warrant based upon this information and other information. One of the things that greatly concerned them is that in this image that they saw at Walmart, the defendant is, his hand is bandaged, okay? And he's buying medical supplies. And he's not there, and they've received information that he has gone back to Louisiana, back to Baton Rouge on November the 27th. And so based upon that and other evidence, they get an arrest warrant, and they enlist the assistance of law enforcement officers from the Louisiana State Police, the FBI, and the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office. And all of these agencies work together, and the defendant is arrested, I believe, on November the 29th of 2016. And you will hear testimony from people who saw him there who will tell you that his hands were sliced. He had a couple of cut marks on his hands. So you will hear that all of the evidence in this case we submit to you points to the defendant as the killer of his parents. And one of the things that we consider in this calculation is, the times of death. The medical examiner and Dr. Marks, the forensic anthropologist, can't tell you how long Joel and Lisa were in those, how long their body parts were liquefying in those tubs. They can't make that determination. But we do know certain things. We know from receipts found in Lisa's belongings where she was on November the 26th, and that she was alive at some point. And we know that from a receipt found in her purse at the scene that she was at this Walmart in Turkey Creek at 12:18 in the afternoon, making the purchases of the items that were found in the foyer. Okay? The receipt, they were able to match up the items listed on the receipt with things that were in the foyer floor. We know that before that, she had gone to PetSmart in Turkey Creek, in the same little shopping center, to get, dog food for her dog. And this is a map, an aerial map. Not up, you'll see right up there in that corner. That's Golden View Lane, that little red circle. That's how close they live to. This is the Turkey Creek Shopping Center. There is here's the PetSmart, and here is the Walmart. So as you can see, she's not that far from the shopping center. She didn't live that far, and I don't know what the traffic was like on that date, but we can assume that at some point she made it home. And we know she made it home because her car was found in the driveway, and the groceries were in the foyer, and you will hear from her daughters that that's not usually how Lisa got into the house. Usually she would come through the garage that they sort of used as a sitting room. They were smokers, so they smoked in their garage. And her typical way of getting into the house would be through the garage door and into the kitchen. That's sort of the logical way most of us carry our groceries in, closest to the area where we're going to put them away. But she didn't use the garage entry that day. So we know she got home. We know that her purse was found in the kitchen, her keys, her cell phone was on the kitchen counter, she made it home. So, we believe the state will prove that she was murdered between that time that it took her to get home, maybe 12:30 p.m. on the 26th, and before 3:35 p.m., because state will prove to you that the defendant was already hurt by 3:35. This is the Walmart receipt, and you will see that it shows November the 26th, 15:35:25. And here he is, leaving the store, and you will note this bandage on his hand.
Unbelievable, isn't it? Unbelievable, those people just walking past this guy who'd done what he'd done and capable of doing that. I just want to say as well, as a quick one, if you want to write to inmates like I do, then use the service I use. It's called Jmail. It's fast and it's secure, and I'll leave a link to their services in the description below. Everyone, please like the video for me, please. Really helps the channel. And if you want to really support me, go on the description below and become a channel member as well. Thank you very much. It means we can do this more often. Guys, thank you. Let's keep going. Let's keep going.
Here's a close-up of him getting the self-checkout, getting his medical supplies for his wounds. So now we know he went back to the house, right? We know he went back to the house because the things that he purchased at Walmart around 3:35 are on the bathroom counter. And I want you to look at these. So here's the receipt again. And here's the bag that the receipt was in. Here's a knife. DNA's on part of that knife. There's some hydrogen peroxide. There's some bandages that were recovered. There's some alcohol, rubbing alcohol, this dermaplast, something like that, some kind of first aid spray. And then all of these gloves. This is Joel Sr.'s cell phone. You'll hear from Kim Lowe, special agent with the TBI, that the defendant's DNA was found on 6 of those gloves, inside and out. So, Joel and Lisa Guy were dead by 3:35 p.m. And we believe the proof will show that after the defendant tended his injuries, he went to work on their bodies and did what he did to them. The forensic anthropologist has a nice name for what he did. It's called disarticulation. That's an elegant name for cutting off their arms and legs and Lisa's head. So, we will prove to you that the defendant had a plan to do this, that this was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. He had a plan, and that is known as premeditation sometimes. Planned in advance. He premeditated. He made, after the exercise of reflection and judgment, made the decision to murder his parents. So in the guest bedroom, where you will hear, Michelle Dennison will tell you that that's where the defendant was staying on Thanksgiving, you're going to see that there's a backpack found in the corner of the room. And it was taken into evidence and later inventoried per the policy of the sheriff's office. That's what they have to do when they seize evidence, something like that. They inventory the contents of it. And here it is. And they opened it, of course, and they found instruction manual for residential hot water heater. They found some books, and they found a notebook. And in the notebook, there was a writing. And I want to go through it with you a little bit because it's kind of hard to see like this. But we'll start from the first line. Get killing knives. Quiet. Multiple. Get carving knives to make small pieces. Get sledgehammer. Crush bones. And of course, there were multiple knives found at the scene. You will hear there was a knife in the guest bathroom, a knife in the sink in the master bathroom. There were 2 knives next to the pile of bloody clothes that belonged to Joel Guy in the exercise room, and then there was a bloody knife next to Lisa Guy's cut up clothing. There is no evidence that he used the knives to make small pieces other than the hands and head, or that he used the sledgehammer to crush bones. You will not hear evidence of that. Bring blender and food grinder. Grind meat. Well, we will not show you that he did grind any meat, but we will show you that he brought a blender and that in his vehicle that was searched after his arrest in Baton Rouge, he did have a food processor in the trunk. Get bleach, denature proteins. Well, there was bleach, several tubs of bleach in the kitchen. Get plastic bin for denaturation process. And I guess that means for dissolving your parents. Does not matter where they're killed. Just get rid of bloody spots to prevent evidence of time of death. Not the mattress or couches. Get rid of bodies inside the house. There and my DNA already there. Because of course he had been visiting, so his DNA would be in the house necessarily. I guess that's what that means. He needs to be, I can't read that word, not intruder. Flush chunks down toilet, not garbage disposal. No evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that he did that. But the next line, get plastic sheeting for disposal process. There is evidence that there was plastic sheeting at the scene on the bed where Joel and Lisa Guy slept. Get hollow point bullets just in case. Will be seen buying bullets. Just use computer room gun. Check to make sure there are bullets. Last resort.
I just don't, like, I've said it a couple of times now and I do apologise, but I don't understand how he's gone not guilty. He's not gone insanity, has he? So how's he going, like, not guilty? He's written everything down. He's been sloppy as anything. It's just mind-blowing, and it's so, like, cut and dry, isn't it? It's mental.
There were no gunshot wounds to the victims. He's not alive to claim her half of the insurance money, all mine, $500,000. You will hear evidence through Jennifer Whitehead and through documents from Jacob Engineering that Lisa Guy did have an insurance policy. She was going to be employed until the following Friday after Thanksgiving. And you will see that he was a beneficiary, in fact, to this life insurance policy. Flood the house. Covers up forensic evidence. No evidence that he flooded the house. Turn heater up as high as it goes. Speeds decomposition. Again, thermostats were in the 90s, both upstairs and downstairs. Bleach reacts with luminol, just like blood. Douse area with bleach. Big sprayer. There was a big sprayer in a box on the kitchen floor. I don't know that it had been opened, and I can't tell you that the state will prove that there was evidence that he doused the area with bleach. But there was lye, and he mentioned, it says trash compactor, ? The next line is body gives time of death, alibi. Don't have to get rid of body if there's no forensic evidence on the body. His fingerprints and DNA. And that brings us to the severed hands. the severed hands. We believe the state will prove to you that the hands were severed for a purpose, okay? For a purpose. There's a reason behind it. Minimize, and we're on to the second page of the notebook. Minimize things I touch throughout the visit. Wear gloves and socks to prevent fingerprints and footprints. And as I said, you will see photographic evidence that there were gloves, latex gloves, found throughout the house, boxes of them, in his bedroom, in the bedroom that he was using in the house, in the master bedroom, in the kitchen, in the guest bath. Drop something down the garbage disposal to break it. Get him on the ground fixing it. Kill him with the knife. Clean up mess from him before she gets home. Kill her with knife. Kill the dog after. Then that's marked out, and above it, leave him alive. Fingerprints. Take dog with you. I don't know what this says. The first word I don't understand. Him with him is all I can read. The next line is place her in shower, turn on hot water, and point at her to get rid of forensics. Remove her clothes and take them with me for disposal. And you know her clothes were removed. Place him in plastic bin and use it to get him into the upstairs bathroom. Well, Mr. Guy's remains were certainly found in a plastic bin in the upstairs bathroom. Cut off his arm and plant his flesh under her fingernails. And I will remind you that Lisa Guy's right hand was severed from her arm. Place her hand with his DNA so that his DNA is not washed away by shower. Use sodium hydroxide. You'll hear evidence that the sewer line cleaner and other products, that's sodium hydroxide. Use sodium hydroxide to destroy his soft tissue and his softened bones for transport. Baste once every hour to accelerate. Flush sodium hydroxide down the toilet.
Basting your dad every hour is unbelievable, isn't it? That is mental.
Wash out bin with handheld shower head and then direct handheld into toilet to flush everything out of the pipes and into the public waterway. Douse killing rooms, kitchen, ? With bleach. Place hair curler with flammable paper and flammable containers of gasoline in 4 locations. His killing room, her killing room, his bathroom, her bathroom. Wipe down areas near killing rooms and bathrooms. Turn heaters up to 90 degrees to melt fingerprints and dry everything. Set her phone to send me a text message late Sunday to prove that I was in Baton Rouge and she was, in quotation marks, alive. Leave through front door and wipe down doorknobs. Timer for flammables set for Friday at 10 a.m. Sunlight masks fire but not smoke. Everyone at work, so they can't report it. This is an enlargement of what is on this page. Ultraviolet light shows fingerprints. Check mail before leaving. To get rid of blood, use peroxide, hemoglobin, and bleach, DNA. Destruction of bodies. Composition of body, 20% fat, 20% protein, 55% water, and 5% other components. Assets. These pages will show you that the defendant analyzed the financial assets of his parents. Her assets, her life insurance, $500,000, possibly more with double indemnity. With him missing, dead, I get the whole thing. All her other assets are joint. Go to him if missing, unknown if he's dead. His assets includes all joint property if missing. When he gets all joint property, also gets joint debt. Knoxville house, homeowner's insurance, possibly, but probably worthless after the fire, $100,000. Sirgoinsville house, appraised at $400,000 plus, worthless with Renee on the property. You will hear testimony that Renee Charles is Joel Guy Sr.'s sister. His sisters live in the Sirgoinsville area. Her car, his SUV, not paid for. His boat, his old truck, paid for. His 401k, $80,000, possibly less after taxes. He could possibly have savings and or other investment accounts. So we believe that the proof will show you, ladies and gentlemen, that the motive in this case is not an element of the crime, but the motive is financial.
It's like Justin said before, instead of doing all this, he could have just applied for a job. Could have just applied for a job. He'd probably be fairly capable of doing something if he can do all this. You know, he's not obviously a total idiot, you know what I mean? Instead, just...
Money, all mine, $500,000. I get the whole thing. There are 2 counts of, 3 counts actually, of felony murder involving theft, the theft of property, and we expect to provide testimony that certain financial transactions were made with the guy's assets after the time of their deaths on November the 27th. And other articles of theirs were taken, and we believe that proof will show just what was taken from them. You're going to hear from expert witnesses, as I alluded to, or as I said earlier. You're going to hear from a DNA expert who will talk to you about the DNA evidence found throughout the house. She's going to tell you exactly where she found the defendant's DNA, certainly on the latex gloves, on some of the weapons, and of course, the DNA of Joel and Lisa Guy were found throughout the house and on a lot of the blood evidence. Not all DNA evidence is blood evidence, of course. And she will explain all of this to you. That's Agent Kim Lowe. Then you will hear about the autopsy of Joel Sr. and the autopsy for Lisa. Dr. Amy Hawes with the Forensic Center in Knox County is our expert witness in that area, and she will testify to you about the cause and manner of death, and you will see photographic evidence, and you'll see diagrams, and she will be able to better explain to you than me what exactly happened to them. And again, you're going to hear from a forensic anthropologist, Dr. Murray Marks, with respect to the injuries to the bones of both Joel and Lisa. Joel was identified by fingerprints because we had his hands, and Lisa was identified by dental records. And Dr. Marks will describe for you and show you images of the damage that was done to their bone structures, and explain the difference between dismemberment and disarticulation. And he will be one of our expert witnesses. You will also hear expert testimony on with respect to fingerprints and electronic devices that were examined by Eddie Wassman with the Sheriff's Office, and Tom Finch, who did the fingerprint evidence. So, other than the felony murder counts, the premeditated murder counts, the felony murder counts, Mr. Guy is also charged with 2 counts of abuse of corpse. You know, I don't think we need to belabor that. And you will hear evidence of flight, and the court will give you an instruction on what flight means and how you can judge it with respect to this case. But the evidence we submit to you will show that after killing his parents and dismembering them and trying to destroy evidence of his involvement at this scene, he left, went back to Louisiana. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that at the end of our proof, at the conclusion of everything, turn it off, you will find Joel Michael Guy Jr. guilty of every count of this indictment, because we will have proven it to you beyond a reasonable doubt. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, General Nacios. Mr. Halstead, would you like to make an opening statement, sir?
Yes, Your Honor, just briefly. I first just wanted to introduce myself. Mr. Stevens did all the work in the jury selection. I am John Halstead. This is Mark Stevens, and we are representing today Mr. Guy. I want to start out by saying thank you for being here.
The world's toughest job is about to begin.
Our criminal justice system is one of probably the best one in the world. And what makes it so great is that we have citizens who are willing to come to court, especially during a pandemic, during a time like this, willing to come to court, spend a week listening to the proof and making a decision. And another strong part of our constitutional criminal process is that that decision has to be made beyond a reasonable doubt. And that reasonable doubt can come from witnesses, it can come from physical evidence, it can come from cross-examination. And we just ask you and know that you will listen to everything very closely, listening for the reasonable doubt and making your decision at the end of the case. Again, I want to thank you for being here. This is a difficult time to try a case, difficult time to do anything, and we really need you, and you've come forward, and we really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, folks, so we are going to take a recess. We're going to rearrange the courtroom to set up the witness stand for the witnesses, and this will take us a little bit of time, but we should be able to start the proof before lunch. I suspect it's probably going to be a 20 to 30-minute break. Once again, do not discuss this case among yourselves. You can leave your notebooks in your chairs if you'd like. Also, if you want to leave personal belongings in the jury room, it'll be locked unless you folks are in there, so feel free to leave your belongings back there if you'd like.
Okay, guys. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to leave it here as well. Justin, we're all going to go. We'll carry this on in a day or two. I'll put a post out on the members main channel's community thing and see what people are saying. Guys, if you can please drop the video a like for me, thank you. I really appreciate you joining me. That was intense, wasn't it? That was absolutely intense. Wow. And that guy's got to defend him next episode. That guy's going to defend him. Unbelievable. Really enjoyed everyone's comments. It's great watching it together, isn't it? I really enjoy these. Yeah, guys, as ever, use Gmail, click the link in the description, support the channel, and I'll see you all very soon. Thank you very much. Until next time, stay sane.